All right, so welcome to the Introduction to 3D Gaming workshop. This is the updated version of the workshop, and we're going to be creating a 3D endless battle arena. And basically, there's going to be enemies that spawn endlessly, and you play as Ellen from the 3D Game Kit, and you are using your melee abilities to attack the enemies, and you'll rack up score or rack up a high score for the game itself. So let's go ahead and jump into the project itself. So the first thing that you're going to do with your participants is you're going to go through the process of project setup. We recommend that you use the Unity Hub to set this up. So make sure that your participants have Unity already installed on their machines, and then also have Unity Hub installed. Now, Unity Hub is a really great part of Unity because what it does is it allows you to manage your installs, your projects, and all of that. So all in one place. So here you can see that I have 2018.1.6 in this particular version installed. You can go to official releases and you can see all of them and install those. And then you can also look at your beta releases right here. So all in one place. Now let's jump into creating a brand new project. So to create a new project, we'll go to New, and we're going to type in a project name. So we'll do something like 3D Workshop Project, and then we're going to set a location. Now the template that we're going to be using is 3D. Something that you'll want to do with your participants is perhaps maybe show them the difference between some of these templates, or just really discuss them. You don't really need to show them. For now, I think it would be a good idea to just discuss 2D and 3D because it really shows a stark contrast. So really, the template is just about setting up some of the settings inside of Unity. If you choose one template over another, there's nothing to be alarmed about because you can actually change all of the settings that these templates use. It's just getting you to a better starting place. So in our case, we're going to use 3D. And then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll create our project. Now, once the project has been created, it will launch Unity, and you'll need to import the assets. Now, the assets will be downloaded from the asset store or from whichever source that we provide that to you in the documentation. So once that has been done, once you've downloaded them, you'll need to show your participants how to import the assets into this. So typically it'll be done with a package, a Unity asset package. So we'll download it, we'll import it in, and it'll look something like this. Now, the assets that are being used for the project are the 3D Game Kit, but we do have a few assets that make some of the workshop a little bit easier. We don't want to overwhelm the participants with a lot of complicated systems and things that need to be hooked up. We're really just trying to show the basics of Unity itself. So now, once you have everything imported in, remember that you'll need to go through the process of going through the interface. So starting off with the interface, make sure you show off the menu bar and the toolbar itself, how to play in the editor. This is really important. Make sure that you stress how to play and then how to stop playing in the editor. Okay. Then you have the hierarchy, which you'll want to point that out. And again, when you're going through your explanations of all of these different pieces, make sure that you're staying simple with all of these. So like the hierarchy, you could just simply state that the hierarchy shows us the scene that's currently open and then all of the assets that are in the scene. You could also say that in the hierarchy, you can select different assets. So you could show how assets are selected right inside of the hierarchy, and you'll see that how the selection is updated inside of the scene view. Now that should lead you into the scene view itself, and this is really just the main window into the editor. Then the game view shows us what the main camera sees in the scene itself. So you can also show that this is going to show exactly what the game will look like when it's being played. Then you'll have the ability to show off the asset store. The asset store is where we can download assets, whether it be from Unity Technologies or from other asset store creators. It's also something that you should mention to your participants is that the asset store is a really great resource to use because you can buy assets for your games and they could be used in your final games. So make sure that you stress that the asset store is a valuable thing that we could use inside of Unity. Then after that, go ahead and switch back to the scene view and then go over to the inspector. You'll want to point out the inspector is context sensitive. So if nothing is selected, you won't see anything in the inspector. So select something and you'll see here that this light, that the light itself or the light component makes this game object a light, okay? You'll also want to kind of discuss the basics of game objects. You'll want to point out that game objects all have a transform component, and the transform component can control things like your position, rotation, and your scale. Then components are added to those empty game objects to make them or to create behavior for those game objects. So in this case, you can see that this is only a light because we have a light component added to it. Whereas the main camera is a camera because it has a camera component, a flare layer component, and an audio listener component. Now, after the inspector, you'll want to drop down to the project window. The main thing that you'll want to stress to your participants about the project window is that this is where all of the source assets are stored. By changing any of the source assets inside of the project window, you will be changing all of the assets in any level or any scene that is in the project. So you'll want to stress to your participants that they should be careful about modifying the assets in the project window and being sure that the change that they want to make is truly the change they want to make. Now, after that, after you have talked about the interface and have broken that down, then you can get into actually navigating and talking about object manipulation. So to practice navigation in the scene, you'll want to talk about how to use, let's say, the PC. So holding down Alt and the left mouse key, that will allow you to orbit. Alt and the middle mouse button will allow you to pan. Alt and the right mouse button will allow you to zoom in and out. Okay. Also show that holding down the right mouse key will allow you to look around. And then while still holding the right key or right mouse button, you can use W, A, S, and D to fly through the scene. Now, another thing that you'll want to show, and this is going to be really important, is how to frame in on an object. You'll need to show your participants how to select an object in the hierarchy or in the scene itself, and then using the F key, you can frame in on an object whether in the scene view or in the hierarchy. One thing that you'll need to stress to your participants is that the position of the mouse is key to using the F key for framing. So if we have the mouse hovered over the scene view, if we press F, that will zoom in on that key or on that object that we have selected. If we hover the mouse over the hierarchy and press F, you'll notice that it highlights the currently selected object. Now, while that is not very impressive at this point, it can be very helpful if we have thousands of game objects in the hierarchy at one time, and especially if there are objects that are parented to one another. So now that we know how to navigate, we've used all of that and even some of the keyboard shortcuts, let's talk about manipulating game objects in the scene. So what I would do is go ahead and go over to the hierarchy, go to Create, and create a 3D cube. By setting this cube in the scene, this will allow you to move objects around, be able to rotate them, and scale them. So using the Move tool, you can use W on the keyboard, or you can select the Move tool here. You'll want to show your participants how the Move tool is used using a single axis, but don't forget about the coplanar axes to move objects faster. Then move over to the rotation tool, which is E on the keyboard. You have your axes that you can rotate along there. You also have the ability to freely rotate, but then you also have one more handle, which is going to allow you to rotate based on the camera view, and it will rotate around that. Then we have the scale tool. The scale tool is going to look very similar to the move tool, but you'll want to show your participants how they can move non-uniformly, scale non-uniformly, but then also scaling uniformly using the cube in the center. Now, once you've talked about using the move, rotate, and scale tool, you could go ahead and remind your participants of those keyboard shortcuts by using what's called QWERTY, Q, W, E, R, T, and Y. So going through those keyboard shortcuts, it might draw attention to the rest of the tools that are in that toolbox. So we have the hand tool, which is basically just allowing us to pan using the left mouse button. Then we have the rect tool, and the rect tool is used for 2D assets. It can be used on 3D assets as well, but we recommend that it be only used on 2D assets. And then the final tool that's in the list here is the transform tool. And the transform tool is basically move, rotate, and scale all in one tool. So then, once you've discussed how to use the move, rotate, and scale tools, it would be beneficial to show off the pivot and center toggle, as well as the local and global, and showing how that will change the position of your pivot points and also the orientation of your gizmos. Now that we have gone through all of those tools, allow your participants to move, rotate, and scale, something like this. And then you'll want to move over to the inspector and show off the transform component. So here you can show off how to reset the entire transform component or to reset individual parameters of that component. So in this case, if we click on the cogwheel, we can reset position, rotation, and scale just by clicking reset, or we could reset just the position, or just the rotation, or just the scale. Whatever you prefer is up to you. In our case, we're going to go ahead and reset all, and you'll notice that it resets that position, rotation, and scale. So now that we have finished up how to work with that and navigating, allow your participants to work on something very simple, to practice moving, rotating, and scaling. At first, this is probably going to take a little bit of time working with your participants, especially if they're absolute beginners. So giving them time to practice this will make things go a lot faster as we move on. So what we can do is something that you could do with your participants is maybe build a very simple scene or allow them to create, let's say, 3 different primitives and allow them to move them, rotate them, and scale them, and then perhaps get them to practice stacking the objects on top of one another. This is also good practice for your participants to learn navigating in the scene. So orbiting around the 3D objects is going to be key when creating levels. So getting them used to navigating the scene view is going to be extremely, extremely important. So now that we've finished that up, you have a little bit of time with your participants, allow them to practice, and then we'll move on into creating the environment for our game.